GHK Lall on Kaieteur Radio 99.1 and 99.5 FM. Welcome to Tuesday, the May 4th edition of the National Outlook. Yesterday we talked about the scourge of the pandemic. Today we're going to talk about something that has been not as bad, but it raises its head sporadically and engulfs us. And this is what happened last week at King Street, where the Sharon's building housed the Sharon's Mall, which houses a lot of small buildings, small businesses, along with offices of a number of attorneys, was completely burned to the ground. We understand that this early stage is electrical, and that has been some source of controversy because there's some pushback that it was really that, and that the fire should have been contained. But regardless of that, that damage is done, and there's a lot of millions to be recouped here, a lot of losses that may not be covered by insurance. But I'm looking at a late last week edition of the Kaieteur newspaper, and it says, in the wake of Sharon's Mall inferno, buildings over 2 stories should have relevant fire equipment installed. Home Affairs Ministry. Bar Association pledges to support colleagues who suffered losses from Sharon's Mall fire. Listen, in this day and age, that's a little bit of a cliched statement. Buildings over 2 stories, this should not be, nobody should need a reminder of that, but it should have relevant fire equipment installed, meaning fire alarms, smoke detectors, meaning fire extinguishers. But in addition to that, this should be, we should have some of these things in our homes, as 2-story homes or whatever we do, in our homes. But we're talking about commercial buildings here, which houses many different smaller pieces like a mall. And these are mandatory. It's not that they should have, they must have. And they must have had it a long time ago, and that they keep going back on a structured basis, on a scheduled basis, to refresh the staff. I know, yes, the staff becomes bored. To refresh the staff, to have their contingency plans dusted off in terms of what we're going to do in the event of a what-if situation. There must be basic training. If this happens, then do this. Of course, this happened in the evening when most people were away. It's good to see that the Bar Association, and that's, I expected no less, that have reached out to their members and pledged some support in whatever form that takes. But understand this, the non-Bar Association tenants of that Sharon Mall building, they don't have the luxury, right? They don't have the luxury of a bar association behind them. So they are now scrambling to put the pieces together to see how they can regroup and restart on an individual store, on an individual business person basis. But let's go back to the central thrust of this conversation this morning with you, my fellow citizens. In our homes, we should have some idea that in the event of this or that, this is what we do. It's called a fancy name, a contingency plan. It's just preparation. In our stores, in our buildings, 2 stories and more, maybe even in the smaller ones, we must have relevant fire equipment installed, and they must be checked to see they're working, and they must be refreshed ever so often, quarterly, semi-annual. That looks a little far, but I would say they definitely must be done. Thank you for listening. This is GHK Lall on Kaieteur Radio 99.1 and 99.5 FM of the National Outlook.
Verbies 99.5 FM. Kaieteur Radio.